Hi, Ann.
Hey, Kathy.
Long time no see.
I know. My gosh, you've grown 3 inches since I saw you last.
Well, that's my iPad stand. I just raised it.
Ah, I love it.
Well, let's see what today brings.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Let's see there. Now you don't see my water glass, except if I do this.
Same here.
I hope we get great participation.
Yeah, I hope so too. I know that the housing bank sent out another notice about this. I got
Good.
2 notices from the town.
And you were always going to go.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
I know. That wasn't, but I'm grateful for all that publicity.
Yes. And the papers wrote it up.
Yeah.
Well,
And thank heavens for Zoom. I mean, this is an advantage that I hadn't even thought of. It allows, I know I've been able to attend many more meetings because of Zoom. And this really does allow for community engagement.
yeah. There. Here she is. Here she is, Miss America.
Yeah. Ta-da!
Got some tea, got a little few office things done, ready to go.
Ah, super. I'm
You
so
gonna-
happy that you're going up to Vermont
Yeah,
with Mary Ann. That's fabulous.
yeah, it's gonna be good to see that part of the family.
Yeah. How long a drive is it?
Well, it's actually kind of extensive. It's 5 hours. 5 hours, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. From the ferry.
Yeah. It's pretty good drive, but it's pretty.
Yes. You're going into good country, Jennifer.
hi, neighbor.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, folks. How are you? Who said that? Who said hi? Ann?
I
And
said,
Kathy? Who
And-
said hi? Andy?
both of us.
Oh, both of you. Okay. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello.
I actually said hi, neighbor, because you're just up the hill.
Yes, that's true. And you're just down the hill. And you got that branch, that horrible branch eliminated. So that was good.
Well,
And hello to you, Warren. I can see you hiding behind your name.
yeah.
maybe.
Well, this is great. I'm sure there'll be a million of us, right?
We hope.
We hope for a good, we hope for a good turnout.
Because there's a lot of info in this presentation.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, just what you want at this hour. Hi, Karen.
Hello, everybody.
Good morrow.
Everybody got his and her game face on, or I said their game face on.
Right.
Totally.
Hi, Janet.
Hello, how are you?
Good. The
Long
better
time.
for seeing everybody. It's nice to see everybody.
Absolutely.
That was my alarm telling me this meeting was coming up.
It's starting soon.
I'm glad you reminded us, Andy.
Well, if I don't remind myself.
Hi, Christine.
Hey, everyone.
Hey there.
Ooh. Wow. A bonita has been caught,
Oh,
not by
By whom?
Jack Cushman.
Oh, nice.
Yes, very. Hmm.
See, you've got your guitar ready to serenade us, Andy.
If necessary.
Warren's got his.
Oh,
Band.
Warren's multi-talented. He has a banjo as well.
Hello, everybody.
I
Hi.
want.
Hey,
Hey, Warren.
We seem to be having much busier days these days than 2 months ago. Everything is happening all at once. People calling up, showing up, walking around, traffic. Oh my God.
Yeah. The traffic is amazingly horrible.
What do you expect on July 26th?
I know.
Question.
I used to not say that until August, but I'm getting to be a curmudgeon about the traffic.
We're close.
true.
It's only bad if you go somewhere.
Yeah, that's true, Andy. Go fishing, right? Then you don't have traffic.
Oh, you're so wrong.
Yeah, I
There
probably.
were 25 boats off Squibnocket on Saturday.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa. That is a traffic jam.
No, it was. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you. Nice to see you.
We all have our drinks in hand and nice to see you.
Hmm. Hmm. Pretty.
All right, 6 o'clock, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with the introduction of tonight's event. My name is Janet Widener, and I'm a member of the Planning Board and also the chair of the Planning Board Subcommittee, which is the Planning Board has 7 members. The subcommittee includes 4 of those members. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Peaked Hill property. The town owns roughly 16.7 acres off of Tabor House Road. And over the years, there's been a lot of discussions about what to do with the property. In 2017, the selectmen formed a committee to hear from the public with ideas and so on, and ultimately to make recommendations as to what made sense to be done with the property. And they came up with 4 things: housing, affordable / elder, community, whatever, but housing is one thing to pursue. Recreation, everybody is very fond of the ball field that's up there, and no one wants to see that go away. And possibly there are other recreational uses. The third was open space, and that could be things like pasture land or community garden, and so on. And then finally, to keep some of the property for future use. So the selectmen turned to the planning board and asked if we could put together a plan for that property from specifically with regards to housing. What could we do there? What makes sense? And what even is possible? So we started out by having a study done by a civil engineering firm to learn more about the property. Where could we possibly sink wells? Where are the wetlands? What makes sense if we were going to pick part of the property and develop it? What part of the property should it be? And I will say that was funded by the MVC. We worked pretty closely with Christine Flynn, who's a planner, and for the MVC, and she's been a great resource to us. So we got the information back from the civil engineering firm. And at that point, well, I mean, other than the coronavirus slowing everything down for about a year, it seemed like a next step was to go ahead and bring on a housing and planning consultant to help us as a town kind of get our heads together on what we want to do on that property with regards to affordable housing, what makes sense, what people want to see, what people don't want to see. And again, thanks to the funding of the MVC, Karen Sonneborg, a housing and planning consultant, is working with us to try to tease out that kind of information from the townspeople and from anybody on the island that has an interest. Could be somebody in another town who has a housing need or and so on. So Karen is conducting a series of 3 meetings. This is the second of the 3. And the first meeting had about 40 people in attendance, which was great, more than 40. And we're hoping we get as much feedback again tonight. I want to say that all the materials from the first session that was held on June 14th can be found on the website, the town website, which has Karen's slides as well as a recording of the meeting. And we're going to do the same thing with what we talk about tonight. All the materials, a recording of the session will be available. So even for people who can't make it tonight, the information will be out there for them to retrieve. I want to just take a second and talk about, in addition to Karen Sonneborg and Christine Flynn, I want to introduce the other members of the planning board who are working this effort. On the subcommittee, besides myself, there's also Kathy Thompson, Peter Cook, and Ann Wallace. The larger planning board includes 3 additional members: Richard Osnos, who is the chair of the planning board, Mitch Posen, who's been a planning board member for many, many years and is well known in town, and Hugh Weisman, who is brand new to us. He joined us in the spring. And I'm going to make the first bad joke of the night and say that he has hit the ground running, which is only appropriate since he organizes the Chilmark Road Race every year.
We still have some spaces.
Oh, there you go. And I also want to mention Jen Christie, who is our admin, who makes everything possible for us tonight and every day and every night. And I want to also say that we've had input from the Housing Committee, the Chilmark Housing Committee, as we've moved out on this. In particular, Nettie Rule and Allison Cameron Parry. So, you know, this is an attempt again tonight to hear from, first to hear from Karen and then to hear from all of you, questions, concerns, comments. The way we're going to run it tonight, after my intro, I'm going to turn it over to Karen. I'm going to ask everyone to mute their microphones at that point. Karen's going to walk through her presentation. If you have questions, if you can just jot them down. And at the end of the presentation, everybody will be given an opportunity to speak, ask questions, and Karen and the rest of us will do our best to answer those. After that, we're going to have a very short poll of 10 questions that's going to be administered by Jen Christie and Christine Flynn. So if you can stick around that long, there's a few demographic questions, and then there's going to be opinion questions based on everything you hear tonight in the presentation and the discussion. What do you think? Where do you think we should be going? So with that, Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Jennifer, do you want to load the PowerPoint?
Yep, I will do that right now.
Thanks so much. So you can actually go on to the next slide. And Janet pretty much covered this. Lots of people have been involved, and their contributions are very appreciated. I wanted to do another kind of shout out to some people that I spoke with about the project, including David Vigneault from the Dukes County Regional Housing Authority, Philippe Jordy from the Island Housing Trust, Laura Silber from the Coalition to Create Martha's Vineyard Housing Bank, and Ariel Faria from the town of Edgartown. So let's go on to the next slide. As Janet mentioned, you can go to the website and see our recording, get information on what we went through, the material that we went through in the first session. But just to break it down very quickly, we discussed, what is affordable housing? You talked about kind of the key takeaways from a recent housing needs assessment that was done by the Martha's Vineyard Commission at the end of 2020. We kind of focused in on the site and what the conditions were. Planning board, we included a list of project goals, and we opened the meeting up to questions from participants about their concerns or what they think are the priority needs to address through the project, and what opportunities there are in the property and in the project. And then went on to next steps. And here, to get a recording of the session, you can use this link. Next slide. So briefly, this is kind of the general kind of takeaways from that meeting that we heard. There was certainly support for developing the site to include some amount of affordable housing. There was support for having a cluster development or a pocket neighborhood. There was a recognition that the most pressing housing need was year-round rentals, but still that there should be some consideration for including home ownership. Idea of having a general mix of development of unit sizes to promote a multi-generational approach to the development, and to be sensitive to preserving a sense of community and Chilmark's rural values. It was also suggested a couple times that the town needs to look at creative solutions to promote project resiliency and sustainability. And there were suggestions on the size of development that ranged from 30 bedrooms to the limits of the site. And there were numbers of comments saying that the friendly Chapter 40B process would be an effective permitting tool. Next slide. So here's the basic agenda, what we hope to cover tonight. And it's a lot of material. So I am not going to expound too much on kind of the key elements of the presentation, because we really want to get to the meat of the meeting, which is to hear from you. But we want to raise some issues for consideration. So when we get to that part of the agenda, we'll be able to get some feedback on some things that we're really looking for you for guidance. So we already did a brief review of session 1. We're going to kind of do a quick review of key project issues and parameters, including development constraints. We're going to look at various development approaches and what the pros and cons of those approaches are. And we're going to look at models, both on island and off island, of developments that might be able to inform our thoughts in coming to the terms and conditions of a development at Picket Hill Pastures property through an RFP. And then obviously at the end to hear from you folks, and we're going to include some polling too. Next slide. So this just gives you some idea about the kind of the site. Jen already mentioned that there is almost 17 total acres on the property, of which at least 6.4 acres have been identified as the best for the development. Access and utilities exist on the site, but will have to be extended. The site analysis that was done indicates the project is not located in nitrogen sensitive watershed. Nevertheless, the project wants to be very responsive to ways of being environmentally sensitive in the development. PERT tests identified the most appropriate areas for development, which include an advanced denitrifying septic system. Also, the site analysis identified 2 potential well sites, but more can be installed. And public water infrastructure is likely to be costly. Ball field will be preserved, and development costs, which are already high and have been high on Martha's Vineyard, have been increased due to the pandemic. Perhaps as much as a guess, 25% more. And down the road, we all hope that the costs will go down somewhat. But as someone who's been doing some work on my house, the cost really, you can see the impact of COVID on labor and materials. Next slide. So as we go through the next slide, some of the things we want you to be thinking about are kind of responsive to these basic questions. How can the project best address the range of local needs? What scale would be most appropriate? And should it be developed in phases? What's an appropriate balance of rentals versus home ownership? If we include both or not. How does rental versus ownership affect financing, as well as who can be served and in what numbers? What's the appropriate mix of unit sizes? Once again, 1, 2s, and 3 to create opportunities for multi-generational occupancy. And what development prototypes can best limit costs and leverage local and state resources? Another question relates to the scale and amenities that might be included in the project that can promote a sense of community as part of the development. Community gardens have been suggested, as well as potentially a community center to really ground and focus the new community that will be created through new housing. Next slide. So with respect to rental, there's been kind of an overwhelming consensus over the years that rental is the first priority. Clearly, year-round rental is the first priority. All the housing plans have been done in needs assessment. And the reasons for that include, are not limited, but they include some of these considerations. To provide greater housing diversity, as 80% of Chilmark's year-round housing stock is owner-occupied, and all but 23 housing units as single-family detached dwellings. Greater housing diversity, to better leverage local and state resources. Almost all current state funding is directed to rentals. Take advantage of greater economies of scale with more financing options. Rentals can usually be done with more units instead of on a smaller scale that's more typical of ownership. And economies of scale is important to kind of limit costs and for affordable units in particular. All rental units count towards the subsidized housing inventory under Chapter 40B. The subsidized housing inventory is that those units that meet all state affordability requirements and go towards that 10% affordability threshold. Whereas an ownership project, only the actual affordable units can count. To serve greater numbers of households over time, because rental units turnover is much faster than home ownership, obviously. Provide more appropriately sized units for increasing numbers of smaller households. And you can incorporate several income tiers depending on project size, potentially including units for lower income residents with incomes that are below 60% AMI. And the area is Dukes County, even going down potentially to 30% to really get at some of the most vulnerable residents on the island and in Chilmark. Next slide. But there still, it still makes sense to consider integrating some home ownership units as well. And that would be to provide starter housing for families who are priced out of the market. And people aren't just marginally priced out of the market because of the high and rising costs of Chilmark. They're way out of the market. Offer a mix of housing needs on the site by addressing a range of incomes and dwelling types. We have examples in the models of how different income tiers can be included in an ownership project. Add to the continuum of housing opportunity, which is a phrase that has been used on the island to look at a wide range of housing needs, even for those with incomes above that 80% area median income threshold that's often used for affordable housing. And to enable those who are raised in town to purchase their own home, be able to move from renter to ownership, which is often a fantasy at this point. Provide more affordable housing for municipal employees or other workers who earn more than 80% AMI. Next slide. So, unlike most communities in Commonwealth, Chilmark has a real history of U-build or home site development, and there's a real comfort level with that type of development. Example includes Middle Line Road project and Nab's Corner, for example. But there are really few, if any, comparables in other communities across the state, particularly in the last couple of decades. The whole home site U-build concept was based on a low cost transfer of property to individuals who then construct their own homes without any local subsidy. Over the last couple decades, the prices of land and property have increased dramatically. It makes it harder to do this transfer on a low cost basis without getting more, being able to benefit more people. And state regulations through Chapter 40B, and then you have the Martha's Vineyard Commission review as well, are really much more aligned with the turnkey approach instead of home build, to do some contortions to make those all work. And you build home site would require an income above 80% of area median income in order to really financially work. And they can't be included on the subsidized housing inventory, which I know Chilmark has not made a priority. But in any case, that is a reality. New build can lead to some confusion regarding management challenges for numbers of parties. Instead of looking, really focusing on a single developer to carry out the terms and conditions of development, you're dealing with multiple parties, each going off and building their own homes. Lack of building plans is a further challenge for owners who have to build their own homes, and further encumbers financing, public review of site and building design, and long-term affordability monitoring. It adds some additional challenges. And fair housing standards apply across the board to projects across the state, but the turnkey model offers more rigorous guidance to make sure that there is fair and equal access to the units and no disparate, as they call it, impacts on anybody who's interested in applying for those units. And it's basically likely to take longer to build with additional cost as well. Time is money, and it take longer to actually build the project. That comes with some additional, maybe unforeseen costs. Now, the turnkey model basically is the town selects through an RFP, typically in this situation, a developer based on the terms and conditions in that RFP. They select that developer, and the developer's mission is to carry out the project, complete the project, get the permitting, get the financing based on the town's guidance. The town basically is setting a price to target specific income tiers and needs that are identified as priorities in the community. With one developer focusing on numbers of units instead of one at a time, you can take advantage of some economies of scale and reduce the per unit development costs. Design can be better controlled. RFPs usually have design standards, some guidance on what the town would like to see. And the developer actually submits a proposal with preliminary plans related to site and site plans, elevations, floor plans, for example. The developer is motivated to build in a timely fashion. Once again, time is money. The faster that the developer can get financing and permitting and get into the ground, usually better. And there's greater predictability of project outcome for all parties, because through the RFP, the proposal, and also the town will enter into a land disposition agreement with the developer that prescribes even more information on the development parameters. So next slide. So we just wanted to give some basic information on the implications of financing. And the project size and whether it's a rental ownership really make a difference. We are aware that per unit costs are high, approaching $400,000, which Based on the pandemic, it's likely to be even more. Economies in scale and ability to leverage other sources of financing are important to reduce the gaps that are needed between the total development costs and what the occupants can afford to pay, which is typically indexed at no more than 30% of one's income, whether it be for home ownership or rental. In regard to rentals, if a project's 30 units or more, likely be able to access a range of financing programs from the state, including the low-income housing tax credit and a number of other programs, in addition to being able to get some CPA money, maybe housing trust funds, and other sources of financing. Through those programs, you could target lower income tiers at or below 60, 50, 30% AMI. And you still have the ability to do some higher income tiers as well. For example, Morgan Woods, which is really effective housing project in Edgartown, has been able to really, in their rental development and through tax credits and a host of other programs, been able to deal with a wide range of income needs. Smaller projects would involve a combination of, certainly CPA becomes important, housing trust funds. The state has a community scale housing initiative for projects that are smaller than those that would be suitable for the low-income housing tax credit. And you need other donations and permanent financing as well. Typically, you would target incomes at or below 80% of AMI. But with some Section 8, project-based Section 8, or including units for those up to 100% AMI, which CPA can cover, you might be able to get some lower and higher income households integrated in the project as well. Home ownership, once again, CPA or housing trust funds become important. Sale proceeds help bolster the sources of financing, and then other sources of funding. Wouldn't it be great if the housing bank had been funded? Maybe there are other, besides donations, there are other sources that could be tapped as well. Maybe some of the short-term rental revenue could be targeted to affordable housing. This whole discussion down the road. Potential state funding has also been proposed by Governor Baker, and we'll see what comes of that. And still, we can get at a mix of income tiers, and certainly there are good examples that we'll talk about on the island to do just that. This table just shows, we talk about 30% AMI, 80% AMI, 100% AMI, just to give you an idea. Say for a household of 3, to get at the 30% of area median income, which is referred to as extremely low income households, that cap is $29,700 based on this year's income limits that are promulgated by HUD every year according to household size. To get to 80%, it goes up to $76,100, 100%, $94,230. And you could go up potentially all the way up to 150%, which would be $141,345. We're talking about working people here. Next slide. Also, with regard to permitting, the Chapter 40B comprehensive permit process gets a bad rap sometimes because developers are forcing developers forcing towns to have to waive local zoning. In the case of the Picket Hill Pasture project, since you're doing an RFP, it's town-owned land, you're going to hire a developer who is going to basically comply with the terms and conditions of the project, and would be use of a friendly 40B project permitting that goes through DHCD in order to get the go-ahead for the developer to submit the comprehensive permit. So both the town and the developer agree on a basic project, and they get permitting go-ahead from the state to go through the ZBA. The alternative would be to prepare and adopt a special zoning bylaw. That would take considerable time and resources. The review of the Martha's Vineyard Commission would be required for either the special permit or the 40B permit. And once again, the permitting would be part of the state local initiative program from the 40B process. 40B would enable units to be included on the subsidized housing inventory, including all the units in a rental development. At least 25% of the units would have to be affordable to those earning at or below 80% of area median income, or at least 20% would have to be affordable to those earning at or below 50% of area median income. And 40B also allows local preference units, which involves a set aside of up to 70% of units in the development to be reserved for those who live or work in the community. The developer does engage a lottery marketing agent, prescribe, with under the terms that of state guidelines, and a monitoring entity to annually oversee compliance with affordability requirements. Next slide. So we'll probably just do a quick look at a current project that had its recent groundbreaking and a couple of others where the RFP has recently been issued. Keens Way in Tidsbury basically uses the Scotts Grove design. We'll show you the Scotts Grove momentarily, with 5 pairings of 2 duplex buildings. There'll be 20 rental apartments that include 40 bedrooms, and the project parcel includes 15 acres, 12 of which will be protected open space. Edgartown just recently issued a request for proposal for a project called Southern Tier. Not Edgartown, Spoke Bluffs. I misspoke. Sorry about that. And the RFP included 2 phases, with phase 1 being in the range of 15 to 25 units, and phase 2 in 25 to 40 additional units. Includes a mix of ownership and rentals. And the project, the property size is 7.8 acres. Next slide. So Edgartown, hot off the presses, just released an RFP for its Neshakit project, which involves almost 7 acres. They are prescribing 36 rentals for households with incomes up to 100% of area median income. That size of project will enable the developer to access low-income housing tax credits from the state, as well as typically comes with other usual suspects of financing programs that are blended with that in order to make the project feasible to those lower income tiers. They're asking for 4 ownership units as well to serve households earning up to 140% of area median income. They want a mix of unit sizes. The town meeting did approve the conveyance of the development rights to a 99-year ground lease. The town also has made a commitment of $800,000 of CPA money and other funds, primarily for, at this stage, for infrastructure work. Next slide. So we also wanted to highlight projects that have been completed in Chilmark. Middle Line Road for one, 12 total units, 6 home sites, and 3 duplex rentals. The town acquired 2 properties for a total of 21 acres, and the Dukes County Regional Housing Authority is managing the rentals. And Nab's Corner involved 4 home sites for those earning up to 150% area median income. And there are quite a few other home site projects, 16 from 2005 and 2014, and youth lots, or 35 from 1975 to 2018. And this shot shows one of the rental duplexes from the Middle Line Road project. Next slide. Ireland's really lucky to have the housing entities it does. The Dukes County Regional Housing Authority, Habitat, Harbor Homes, and Island Housing Trust. When I'm working with other communities and they're talking about pocket neighborhoods, I'll often use the Island Housing Trust models because of its compelling design and environmentally strong standards. The top photo is Scotts Grove, includes 9 units in West Tisbury. It was completed in 2018. There are 2 clusters of duplexes that front each other with a connection of community of decks. And the project is managed by the Dukes County Regional Housing Authority. Sepias Apartments is another Island Housing Trust development with 3 units, also in West Tisbury, on 1.5 acres. It complements, there were 4 existing rental units that are on site that were owned and managed by the Dukes County Rental Housing Authority. And it was completed at the end of 2014. And it used CPA money and then the Federal Home Loan Bank Board's affordable housing program that helps support financing. Next slide. And Island Housing Trust also has a number of ownership models with cluster housing makes sense, or small projects. For Jenny Way, picture the photos on the top on the right, and then the site plan is to the left, involved, that was completed in 2008 on 2.53 acres. We were talking about projects that include a wide range of incomes. This one included units at 80%, 100%, 120%, and 140% of area median income. Received some money from the now no longer operational Island Affordable Housing Fund, but importantly, Community Preservation Act money and Cape Light Community Compact funding for the environmental work, and 9 total homes. And then there's Smalley's No, which is a fairly recent project. Involves 2 3-bedroom homes. The property was sold at a below market price, 5 total acres. The homes are about 1 acre. 100% area median income is the income limit. Cost of homes, $255,000. And Island Housing Trust projects typically involve a ground lease with the Island Housing Trust. And the financing for this project included 2 anonymous donors and CPA. Next slide. Some more home ownership models. I can tell you though, the financing would be a little different, but you could make these pocket neighborhoods work with home ownership or rental or both. Depending how you manage and you finance it, you could incorporate different approaches. Lycombe's Way had 8 homes. West Tisbury involved, those homes it was a larger parcel, and the homes were congregated on 8 acres. The project was completed in 2004. And one of the houses was actually built by Habitat for Humanity, which is interesting. And And this involved financing from the Island Housing Fund, CPA, the Federal Home Loan Bank Board's Affordable Housing Program, and some money on environmental work from Cape Light Compact. And then Lambert's Cove, a smaller project, only 4 homes on a 3-acre parcel in Tisbury, involved CPA, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and was completed in 2010. And next slide. And here are just some off-island models of cluster housing. Riverwalk in Concord has 13 units. Award-winning project was developed by Now Communities, architects, Union Studios, and you see Union Studios fingerprints on a lot of these pocket neighborhoods. That really has been one of their primary work. I mean, they've done other things, but they really have done a lot of work on these pocket neighborhoods. It was, the houses are, you can see, grouped around a garden, and they range in size from 1,340 square feet to 1,760. And also Now Communities was developer with Union Studios. And then Danielson Grove in Kirkland, the bungalow cottage housing, cluster housing phenomenon really became a movement in the Pacific Northwest. And a lot of the earlier developments came from there. And the one down below is Danielson Grove in Kirkland, Washington, by the cottage companies. It was completed in 2005. And you notice that both in Riverwalk and in Danielson Grove, they've integrated a community building where people living in the cluster or clusters around it can congregate for various kind of social or other reasons, which really does help create a sense of community around these green spaces. Next slide. So Emerson Green in Devens is a large project, 124 units, and included an array of building types. And these are some examples, from single family homes to duplexes to triplex, and kind of a multifamily development. You can see this one probably was a multifamily rental that was broken up, larger farmhouse broken up into multiple units. And the income was, limits were up to 100% of area median income. Now Communities also developed this, and Union Studios also involved. And then this project is one that's in East Greenwich, Rhode Island, cottages on green, 15 units, and includes single units, duplexes, and 1 triplex, once again, facing each other on a kind of a green space, mixed income, and that's it for next slide. This project is in the approval stage, hasn't been given the firm go-ahead as far as I know, but includes 31 units in Brewster, and it includes 8 carriage houses, 17 detached cottages, and 6 cottage duplexes, likely a mix of ownership and rental and mixed income. And this conceptual drawing is something that the town of Norwell was looking at from LBG Architects. It's probably denser than we'd like to consider, but it shows how a barn-like structure on a sloping site, which is what Beacon Hill Pastures that has some slope, can kind of really fit into a kind of a rural environment with some ownership units around it. Next. So what, we raised in one of the previous slides, a whole range of questions where we'd like to get your impressions. But certainly we would love to hear from you what development options make most sense to you. And also if you have any insights on what you think are going to be some of the biggest hurdles in obtaining project approvals, that might be helpful guidance for us as well. Next slide. Just want to make sure you put on your calendar that the next session is going to be on September 20th, 6 o'clock. We're going to start focusing it more on the details. And what we're hearing tonight, start looking more at the terms and conditions for a potential RFP, including goals and design guidelines. Then the town of Chilmark is going to have to go through some real deliberations among boards and committees and really try to kind of focus on what they want to include in the RFP, then issue it and then select the most qualified developer. And next slide. So we'd like to thank all of you for being here this evening, and we look forward to your guidance. And once again, here's the link to the recording of this session. And and if you want to submit further comments, to go to this link. We'd love to hear more from you or any of the people that you know that still would like to weigh in on the project planning. I think that's it. Was a lot pretty fast, but we really want to get to what people are thinking about all of this. And Janet, do you want to get over?
Yeah, Karen, thank you. As you said, that was a lot of information, and but it was good information, and it's going to be, as you said, available on the website. People can look at it, mull it over, and so on. So thank you. And at this point, as Karen said, we'd like to open it up to comments, questions, ideas from anybody who was on the call. If you raise your hand, I'll recognize you, and just be patient because I have to kind of scroll back and forth, and your hand might be up a few minutes before I see it, but I'll do my best to get to everybody. And so please chime in, anyone. Sarah? You're muted, Sarah. There you go.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kadori, and I live on Pasture Road in the Peaked Hill neighborhood. And I wasn't at the last meeting until the very end, so I didn't get a chance to make a comment, but I would like to chime in with my neighbors to say that I'm in support of a housing unit on Pasture Road. I really like the look of Scottsgrove. I bicycle by there often on my way to and from. And also the design of Riverwalk, which looks very appealing to me. And I would say that that's the scale that I would hope the town decides to go for. I think you said 9 units at Scottsgrove, 13 units at Riverwalk. I did listen to the recording of the last meeting, and I believe Warren Doty said that he thought somewhere between 9 and 12 units would be appropriate. And that's, I think, the scale that I would feel comfortable with. And I think I should mention that the reason we built our house on this property, and we were in fact the very first house to build on this property, was for the peace and quiet. I've also lived in the suburbs where the blowers and the mowers ring out from 8 in the morning until 5 at night. So I'm quite concerned about turning what to us is a beautiful rural paradise into some kind of suburban nightmare that I fled from I work at home and noise is a big factor in my work. In terms of thinking about what might change our way of life here, I would say that we, for example, can hear very clearly the cheering and from the baseball field, which is really right in front of where the development would be. And so one constructive thing I thought of, in addition to keeping the scale small in order to maintain the peace and quiet of this neighborhood, would be to have a design like Riverwalk or Scott's Corner, where it's around some kind of common natural landscaping, so you don't have the 12 lawnmowers and lawn blowers basically destroying the peace and quiet of your neighborhood. So that would be one idea, and I think both those developments are really beautifully designed. That's all I have to say.
Oh, can I just add something?
This is my husband, Fred Kadori, who also lives here.
While we're unmuted. One, as to the presentation that was just made, I thought it was actually a little bit negative on the, we'll call it what was referred to as the U-build model that has been the primary way of providing housing for, especially for young families in the town. We have 2 youth lots actually on Pasture Road, and that, very successfully built by their owners who are still here now, almost 20 years later. And the stability of the ownership model and the ability of people to actually achieve quite significant cost savings through in-kind labor, through their friends, through some very clever things that we've observed people do is something that really wasn't, I thought, flagged or captured here. So it was a starker contrast than I think maybe is appropriate. And I think that the ownership, the value of ownership, and this has been demonstrated, I think, across the country and indeed maybe the whole world in terms of stability of housing and the intensity of management that's required for rental units is tremendous. And I have personally some experience with this, and it's really a big deal, and it will be a burden on the town administration to ensure this is being done right. So I think having a significant mix favoring ownership for the young families in the community, people who work for the town or in the immediate area, because this isn't exactly convenient to going anywhere, right? It's a pretty long trip to go anywhere. So I'll stop there before we monopolize too much time.
Okay, thank you. I mean, those are some very well thought out comments. And so thank you for that, both of you. Valerie, you had a hand up as well.
Yeah, I guess actually live nearest to where this would be, but that has nothing to do with my question, because I thought there had been some kind of questionnaire that went to the community about how this project would serve the needs of the community. Didn't that happen or not?
No, we haven't sent out a questionnaire. It is possible to go on the town website and send comments in, but we haven't sent any kind of a questionnaire out yet.
I just feel that, addressing the community that shows up at these is very limited, and that if you want a real understanding of what people who live here feel they need, there should be an actual questionnaire that goes out to everybody so that everybody has a chance to weigh in, whether they were conscious of these meetings or not, or they're just working so hard right now. This is not something they can even, get to unless they got a questionnaire that they would actually answer, because it may affect them and their ability to stay here, or their children to be here, or their other family members. That's all.
Well, that's a great idea. And we'll have to talk about that. That sounds like a great idea. Thank you. Clark or Pam, actually. Pam, you're muted. There you go.
I had a basic question. Who owns the project if there's a developer? Does the town maintain the kind of control they would if they oversaw the project themselves, such as Molly's Way? And I think Molly's Way has been quite successful with the mix of housing, although I think probably we need more rentals than home ownership. It's not just the economy and where we are now. It's harder to there's not more land coming around for more public public rentals, and the management of rentals seems to have been made very doable by the involvement of the housing authority. So that's really worked well for the town at Molly's Way. But I'm curious about the developer you're thinking of advertising for. Is that become the owner of this property, and do they have to make a profit that might impact the actual economy for the people who want to live there?
I can't answer that with certainty. I think the town will be the ultimate authority on the development, but I don't know that, and it's something we need to talk about. Karen, you've got a hand up?
Yeah, if the ownership units, well, let's say that all the units, there would be ground leases with the Island Housing Trust if they were chosen, or some other land trust. But say if it's an ownership project, chances are there'd be condominiums and a homeowners association, and the owners would own the property. If in a case of a rental, chances are the developer would own the buildings or the property, and they would hire a property manager. The town would convey the property either through a long-term lease or some nominal amount through a land disposition agreement. But the town would probably convey its ownership rights to the developer. That's a way for them to get financing.
Thank you, Karen. Peter, you have a hand up. Is it on the same topic or?
Caitlin.
Oh, hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caitlin Cook. I own a house at Nab's Corner. Was gratefully won a house in the lottery there a few years ago, and it changed my life and made it so that I could live and stay here on Martha's Vineyard. We were thinking about moving, and if we hadn't won the lottery and done that, we would have moved. But what I just wanted to say was that isn't it Middle Line Road that has a combination of housing units where people got to build them, and there were rentals and there were houses to rent? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think that I'm gonna say, from what I hear from my friends and from people, acquaintances that I've met, of people my age or even younger than me that are starting families here, and or even are working at Kronig's or whatever it might be, like maybe they've been here for generations and now they can no longer afford to buy here, and they can't stay in their parents' basement any longer, or they might all implode, and they can't find rentals, to be honest, anymore. So I think my perspective on this is that if you turn over the whole project to an outside enterprise, from what I've seen in the past, when that happens, I'm sorry to say, I don't feel like you get the best quality housing out of those deals. I feel like those things are built it's just not, they're, island weather, and we have to think about the future and how things are being built these days and whether or not what materials you're even going to use to build a house these days and make it affordable. But I do feel like a lot of people my age who have families, they want to build their own houses and they can't afford to buy the land here and build a house. So, and then there's the echelons of people. So if you had 9 to 13 areas available to build on, I highly recommend thinking about having a variety of different living spaces, some houses for people that have 3 kids already and have been moving every, 4 times a year, and apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, and, just having a lot of different options and looking at the complexity of what is needed rather than trying to make a quick deal and like have it all happen and be sewn up by some outside group. That's all I would say. And, I wake up every morning and I just can't believe my luck. That's how I feel about that. I'm extremely grateful, but I know that there's a lot of people who are like me, who have family here for generations and they're just out of their minds trying to figure this out. So it is that balance of trying to move quickly, but also understanding what's really necessary for the population. Thanks.
Thank you. That was great, Caitlin. I'm looking for other hands.
Some people have their hands raised in their little window too, as well as physically.
Okay, I see Warren's got a hand up, and I'll try to catch anybody else after Warren. Thanks.
We could ask Island Housing Trust Philippe here about the ownership at Scotts Grove in West Tisbury, and that could be a very specific answer. West Tisbury went that project, and Pam's question is, who owns it? If Philippe could answer that.
I'm sorry, Warren, were you referring to Smalley's Knoll or Scotts Grove?
Scotts Grove.
Okay, Scotts
that
Grove. Yeah, so that is land owned by the town of West Tisbury, and what town of West Tisbury put that out for a request for proposal, and the Island Housing Trust submitted a proposal that was accepted, and subsequently, after it secured all the necessary permits and funding, entered into a ground lease with the town. So it's leasing the land from the town, which has certain requirements, performance requirements that the Island Housing Trust has to maintain in terms of renting affordably to island families.
Great. So the property is still town property?
Correct.
And during the process of building the development, the town was the manager of the, or you contracted directly with the town? I don't know if that question makes much sense, but.
So, yeah, so the town has to have an arm's length relationship with a nonprofit developer. Otherwise, you get into public procurement requirements, which will drive up the price of any construction. As you know, town projects usually cost about 30 to 35% more. So the town did have control over the permitting process. Secured a special permit from the planning board. We went through a pretty extensive public outreach process involving the neighbors and anyone who wanted to weigh in on the site plan and the housing plans. And there was funding too. There was CPA funding that was awarded. So that obviously the town had, had to be presented everything in accordance with their funding requirements. So there was active participation of the town. They didn't manage the project, but they did approve the project.
Okay. Thank you, Philippe. That was helpful. And I think, did that answer Pam's question, Pam?
I mean, Island Housing Trust is sort of like, it's an island institution, and it's very much with the program. I mean, so but if it were just a developer who had to make a profit, that concerns me. I think the island is so lucky to have Island Housing Trust. It's a wonderful partner for these town projects.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. All right, I'm going to recognize Laura Silver next, and I know there's a few other hands, so I'm going to get to all of you eventually.
Great. Thank you, Janet. I'm Laura Silber. I'm the coalition coordinator for the Coalition to Create the Martha's Vineyard Housing Bank. At the earliest, we're a couple years away from receiving any money. If the enabling legislation passes, it probably won't pass until a year from July. And then there would be time involved with structuring and being able to receive the funds. So I just wanted to clarify, in the presentation, there was mention of the housing bank, but we're several years away from seeing any revenue from that in the best case scenario, I would say. The other thing I wanted to mention was I attended the first meeting on this, and there was some really great talk at that meeting of actually looking at higher density, of doing more than just 9 to 13 units, because of the size of the property and the number of bedrooms that it could accommodate, especially if there were nitro systems used, and also the need and the idea of a pocket neighborhood. Neighborhoods are nice when you have more people there. So 9 to 13 homes it's fairly small for a neighborhood. And if you have a higher number of units, you've got, you really do have a neighborhood, especially if there is a community house there, which, I have friends in Chilmark who've mentioned what a wonderful addition that would be to the area, because there's so little community space in the off season. So to have something like that, I think would be really wonderful. I live in Longview in West Tisbury. It's very wooded here. I have neighbors, but it's a really tight, lovely community. There are a lot of us in here, but we really support and help each other. And in the off season, especially during a pandemic, it's been marvelous to have that many neighbors around, and noise really isn't an issue. People are very respectful. So I would encourage the town to, consider higher density. And I think then you really could get a mix of rentals and homeownership opportunities that would satisfy the needs on both ends. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Dunn, so you've got a hand up?
Yes,
Yellow
thank you,
hand.
Janet. Thank you. This is very informative. This is the first meeting that I've attended. And I think my comments are, I have a number of ideas, and some of them are more focused on who would end up living in this community. I'm very much in favor of it. I live on Middle Road. And I think one of my biggest wishes is to diversify our town. We have an island that, we've got a significant number of folks that are Black, Brazilian, Wampanoag. Few or none live in our town year round. And by diversifying, we are creating more vibrancy and adding to the fabric of our community. We'll also add economic resiliency. And frankly, a lot of those folks are, the ones that are taking care of the homes of maybe people on this call, the landscaping, the painting, the building, the whatever. And I appreciate the sentiment of wanting to earmark a percentage of these potential homes for folks who already live in Chilmark, children of people who live in Chilmark, and I appreciate that, and I think that that's important. And I feel very strongly about wanting our community to be more diverse. I'll just leave it at that. And so that would, I'm not exactly sure how to go about that. I think in reading some articles, marketing is kind of what maybe along the lines of what Valerie had suggested, that maybe a questionnaire involved not just Chilmark, but maybe I don't know how you would do it. I don't know what the mechanism would be, but a concerted effort to reach a much broader audience in this. As well, I don't know if there's any legal guidelines for this, but as a teacher in the island schools for 20 years, housing for teachers is a huge, huge issue. And it would be wonderful if at least one unit, whether it's a home ownership or rental, would be designated for teachers, because it's a real problem trying to get teachers to come to the island when vacancies open up. It's always a housing issue. And if we want to draw, really phenomenal teachers, then that's a small way that we could potentially contribute. I, of course, would hope that all of these homes would be ADA compliant and accessible. I see a lot of homes that don't have ramps, there are stairs going up to them. They're supposed to be ADA compliant, but I'm not sure that they are. So I think that's really important as well, to make sure that we're including as many people as possible. Just a couple other thoughts. One is, I like the idea of a balance between rentals and home ownership. There are so few opportunities for people on this island to own a home, and I don't know, because I haven't surveyed a broad audience, but my sense is that there are a lot of people who want to own a home. They want to have that security. They want to have that economic investment. Yes, it would be nice to at least have a rental that they can count on, but to work, you're just throwing money down the toilet when you're paying rent, and to own a home is a whole other ball game. Let's see what else. I really like the idea, some of the ideas that were shared earlier. I think it would be wonderful to have included in this community a community center of some kind, gardens. I keep thinking of co-housing, where they have a common house, just another really beautiful way of bringing people together. And lastly, renewable energy. If there can be a way to, I just talked with Vineyard Power today, and they are working on creating some more community available solar panels. But I think that would be an important component. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. And I would just, in response to one of your comments about the teachers, the Chilmark school principal had approached the Board of Selectmen on just that topic. Concerns about how do we find housing for teachers if we need staff, where can they live? So I think that's on the radar of a lot of us. So thank you. Wendy Wolf.
Yes, thank you for giving me a second. I'm a Chilmark resident, and I'm actually wanted to divulge that I'm on the Island Housing Trust Board and have worked with them for many years. I'm thrilled to see this moving forward. I echo the concern about diversity. I feel that I think it was what Lee was talking about how people want to build their own homes. But from our experience, I think we learned that it's a lot easier to control costs and design when you're doing a bunch of homes at once. As everyone knows, the costs of construction have skyrocketed in the last year. And so one of the ways to do that is to be buying in bulk for multiple houses. I think it's important to know that I'm glad the last speaker mentioned energy issues, that the trust does try and build energy conscious, solar, environmentally responsible housing. And I suggest that people drive by the efforts on either Greenwood Avenue or Scotts Grove to get some sense of what these collectively built houses look like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Lindsay, I don't see you at the moment, but I had seen your hand up.
Hi. I'll wait until Colin. I think Colin's eager to speak, so I'll wait until after he's spoken.
Okay. Colin?
Sorry, I know I'm young to not be knowing how to use Zoom, but I think that when I hear all these people going around talking about affordable housing, I don't know how many of them own homes in Chilmark or own homes, but I feel like I'm not hearing a lot from people who don't own homes in Chilmark or own anything, which is myself. I have a young family. My grandfather was born here, my mother, my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. And I have no hope of owning anything here on the island. And when I hear, oh, we need to be inclusive and diversity and all this stuff, I agree with all that. But what we really need to do as well is preserve, sorry, I forgot the kids, is preserve community. And sorry, I'm gonna get away from the crying children. But we really need to preserve our community as well. And that means when someone drives by me, I recognize them and they recognize me, and they knew my mother and my grandfather and my great-grandfather, and their grandfather knew my great-grandfather. And when I hear all these people talking about what we need to do, we're listening. It's just frustrating when I hear summer people telling me what we should do with our community. We have many of the islanders here have one home, have their backs up against the wall, have no hope for their future, no hope for their children, nothing to own, no prospect to pass anything down. You need to create home ownership for Chilmarkers and people with history and culture here, because that's how you preserve culture. The America's being homogenized and just completely destroyed by corporations and wealth. And I'm sorry, I'm just digressing, but so frustrating when I hear summer people telling me what we should do with our community. Our community is a year-round community who has history, and I'm sorry, I'm just so frustrated with this process. I'm frustrated there's been 16 acres sitting up there for this long, and we're talking about 3 acres and 9 places for people to live. People need help now. I've got friends who've left, people are coming back. We don't need people from other places coming here. We need to keep the people that are here, that are precious, that are friends in our community. We need to keep them here. We need to keep them passing stuff on from generation to generation. It's frustrating. And I'm sorry, I wasn't planning on speaking. I always listen to these things, and I know I have trouble speaking at these because I get so angry about it. But anyway, that's, you can decipher that angry gibbering. Be my guest. Thank you.
Colin, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts very much. Lindsay, you're still waiting in the wings? Lindsay, do you wish to speak? Or I know David Vigneault has a hand up, but I was going to get back to you first, Lindsay.
No, that's all right. I'll pass. Thanks.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. David, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. I was appreciative, Rule, that you did speak. And also, Deb made some wonderful additions to the thinking around this planning. And I just want to say there's nothing mutually exclusive about both preserving people who are here through year-round rentals and truly affordable ownership, and also increasing the diversity in the town to reflect the diversity of the island. Rentals are doing that somewhat, and ownership can too. And the fact is, both of these things are arguments not against, judicious planning for the property, but a multiplicity of units and approaches in the package that's being put together. So, and I also, regarding the, Sarah, you and your husband, brought up the point about the U-builds that were so successful in town 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I actually authored the list comparing U-builds to Turnkey, just making points based on our experiences as a community and with ownership over 30 years, the way things have changed during that period. And some of those factors are simply about where we've evolved to. So again, we also keep a home buyer wait list and give notice to all home ownership sales and resales that come up. Right now, anything you put up for resale as an affordable unit, you're getting many more qualified buyers who are stepping up, because it's easier to imagine emptying your pockets and owning a home right now than it is finding a 12-month lease, period. And so again, not to argue against anything here, but to say that the more of these options that are judiciously put together in a package by the town for developers to look at, the better we can address a range of needs right now to preserve people who are here, to be able to attract new employees to the town hall, to the schools. Yes, you can do local preference for municipal employees in home ownership. You can do a percentage of that for the initial offer for rentals. We can go further into those things as you go along. There's been very good experiences. Middle Line Road, I think, taught us all a lot. And to the point again raised reasonably about noise and what have you, the difference with having 15, 18, 20 rentals is you have one property management company. Those renters, don't have landlords of their own for very good reasons. And so not only are things a bit more concentrated, but they're also, as Philippe made the point to a visit from Nantucket housing folks last Friday, that he and I live here. We were saying, we get the calls from selectmen, we get the calls from neighbors. We have to be responsive. We want to be responsive. So I think that speaks to the management after the development. And I hope that folks would say that that's what's happened at Middle Line Road, and that's what is going to happen at this wonderful project, whatever you come together and agree on in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I don't think I see any more hands, but somebody shout out if they do have one up, and I'm missing it somehow.
Well, could I say a few words?
Yes, Warren, sure.
The select board of Chilmark is very excited about this project. We've been thinking about it for years and years and hoping that it would move along. I think these three sessions that you've scheduled for this summer are really productive. I think it's really good to hear completely different points of view, some passionate ideas from different people. And we are going to move ahead with this project. And so, Janet, just tell us, so we have another meeting scheduled for September. And then what happens after that? What's our timeline?
Well, that's a great question, Warren, and it's one we've been struggling with. The ultimate goal of the effort that Karen is doing for the MVC for us is to conduct these sessions and help us put together an RFP for the project that we think we want to pursue. The biggest question is when and how to get other boards involved. Most importantly, the selectmen. I mean, we've kept you in the loop on what we're hearing, but at some point the town will have to vote to go ahead with the project. And I'm not sure, like we had a goal of having an RFP by the end of the year, but I think we have to insert the town voting on something before we would release an RFP. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have an answer, but it's something we've talked about, and we actually had planned the next time we come to see the selectmen to bring that topic up.
Well, before we can even talk about RFP, we need to know how many units and what, and there's got to be a definition of what we're asking for.
Yes.
How many bedrooms, how many units, and there's a lot of discussion about that tonight. And we have a way to go before we decide how many
Yes.
buildings we have, how many duplexes, and what's going on.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be discussed, and I think, you know, we have work to do between now and the next session to put together the feedback we received tonight. And I know Karen has ideas of where she wants to go in her additional work, but we do need to start getting, you know, like we can come, we, the planning board, I think, can put together what we've heard and what our recommendations are, but the ultimate approval will have to be much broader than just us.
Hi.
What you
No, hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi.
How are you? I just have one other thing to add that I know that this is all I wanted to say was I know this is one project. This is one project of hopefully many projects that will go on Martha's Vineyard to support young people bringing up their families here, professionals, teachers, people that we need who do service work for everybody. And I know I'm talking to the planning board right now when I say that this is part of a bigger problem, and I know everybody knows that. But my perspective is that there are not laws in place to protect land and use of land for the people who live here year round. And I know that this is not part of what we're talking about tonight, but I do want to say that aligned with this particular project, if there could be somebody who is investigating the laws around how land is bought and kept by people for use 2 weeks a year, multiple acres of land for use 2 to 4 weeks a year, and how that affects our community, I think that would be an amazing project to put alongside these huge things that we're trying to achieve for low-income housing. And how does that land and the scope of that, what people can buy that are not from here and don't live here year round, affect our year-round housing? And how could maybe we create some awareness and accountability, and, you know, for how maybe that's talked about, and how we work out, how we support, you know, how those people can actually support year-round housing for small families on their 50-acre piece of land. So I think this is what the land bank was talking about, but I'm just trying to bring it into this scope. It's like, it takes everyone, kind of like what Deb was talking about, to diversify. You can't just diversify, you really have to figure out how to do that and how to attract people. So anyway, I just felt like I needed to say that because I've been thinking it a long time, that this particular thing that we're trying to do is actually a Band-Aid for a bigger problem. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last raised hand, I think, from Doug Ruskin. And then after that, I think we're going to do our polling and wrap up for the night. Doug, if you're still there.
I am. First of all, thank you for doing this. Just to be clear, I have been involved in housing efforts since about 2004, currently on the board of the Island Housing Trust. And I want to thank Colin particularly for his passionate perspective. One of my frustrations as a housing advocate for years is that folks who need housing are the least heard, primarily because they're struggling so hard just to stay here, working multiple jobs and raising families and not having the ability to participate in forums like this and the kind of work we do. So thank you for speaking up. I have only 2 points I want to make. One is a follow-up to what Dave and Yo said about multiple applicants. In the last couple of years, Island Housing Trust has seen a ratio of approximately 10 applicants for every unit that we've made available. It's a problem we all know exists, but when you hear the data like that, it really underlines how severe it is, and it's across all issues, whether it's income or the kind of jobs people have, whether it's municipal jobs or waiting tables. Every income strata and every demographic has a need, and we see it every time there are units up for lottery. And I can tell you, having observed those lotteries, it can be pretty heartbreaking. Certainly, the folks who get the units that they get are excited and very happy, and then there are 6 or 8 or more who are disappointed, and it's tough to watch. So from that perspective, I'm going to encourage you to maximize as best you can the number of units you create or you ask for. There are a million moving parts to these projects, I know, but there is a far greater need than I think a lot of people realize. And so if you can find it in your hearts to ask for the maximum, there are a lot of reasons why that works for many people. The other thought I had as I was listening to just the last few comments about next steps, West Tisbury has created RFPs for housing. Oak Bluffs, as you mentioned at the beginning, Edgartown. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go to those towns, ask them for how they did it and who they consulted. They all worked with outside consultants. Every result is slightly different, and certainly every piece of land and town has slightly different requirements. But there are really competent consultants who can streamline this for you and tell you how you can get this done sooner rather than later. So I would encourage you to talk to those folks. They've done it most recently, as you know, in Edgartown and Oak Bluffs. They didn't use the same consultants as far as I know, but they have good, viable RFPs, and don't start from scratch. So that's all I had to offer. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Doug. Much appreciated. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Jen Christie and Christine Flynn to do the polling. I hope everybody that's on could stay on for just a few more minutes. I don't think this will take more than 5 minutes, but it will be very useful information for us. So Jen and Christine, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. Jen and I have 2 polls that we're going to put up tonight. One is really the first poll are 5 questions geared to the audience. And the second poll is geared to the project itself. So if you could just take a couple of minutes, and if everyone could stay and answer the questions, would really appreciate your feedback. Thank you. Jen, if you could load up the polling.
Sure. Okay, so
Thank you.
this one coming up is poll number 1. Okay, so the first poll is done and the results are being shared. Did everybody get a chance to do that?
I'll be honest, I couldn't figure out where to click or what to do.
Oh.
The poll dropped before I was able to get in the last two questions. Is it possible to just put the poll back up for
Yeah,
a minute
I
or two?
relaunch it. All right, I'm relaunching the polling. This is the first time I've done this, so I think it must be like a 15, 17-second thing, so. And there's probably a way to adjust that, but I don't know what it is.
Do we all have to re-answer?
You might, yes, I think it does clear it. I'll try to do better for the third session.
What do we do on an iPad?
That's a good question. I don't know that, if you can't see the poll.
I can see it, I can't comment.
We'll try to work those logistics out next time, Kathy.
Right, and then there's some votes.
That's fine. At least we have more votes now.
Okay, and so those are the results. I'll stop that. And then our second poll is the one concerning questions about the site and the project. So I'm about to launch it. Here goes. So let me fix the time at least. Okay, it looks like most everybody has been able to do so. So I'm going to end that and share the results.
Okay. Right, having a broad range of incomes, extremely important at 28% and very important. So that's great. The second question, how important is it to have a mix of rental and homeownership units? 44% very important, 39% extremely important. In terms of rental versus homeownership opportunities, do you think the balance should be? And 39% in favor of rental, 39% in favor of home ownership. And in terms of maximizing the density, 50% said extremely important and 28% said very important. So thank you all for the polling. This is very helpful for the committee in terms of our coming up with some guidelines for our third community engagement session. So thank you very much for the feedback. We really appreciate it.
I had a
All right,
question.
Janet, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, and Warren's got a question, so
I
I'm
had
gonna.
a question that we should ask is that there was no category for over 75. And there was no category for how long do you expect to live here? Or maybe it is how long do you expect to live? I'm not sure.
Warren, I tried to be as diplomatic about the questioning as possible. So the over 65 seem to be the most sensitive. But thank you. We will keep those questions in mind for the next time.
Thank you, Christine. And I think we're done for the night. I'm going to thank everyone on behalf of the planning board and subcommittee and Karen and Christine. We do appreciate the attendance, the input. stay tuned, please. And again, all the materials are going to be on the website, and you can refer to those as well, and point them out to other people who maybe didn't make it onto tonight's call but are interested. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone.